So finally a build video for you guys. I'm going to be making you guys a little desk with tapered legs, Mortise and Tenon joinery with classic bead details made from tulip and quarter-sawn oak, and drawer slides done differently. I'm going to get it in the comments for this. Let's get balls deep. Like with any project, you need to rough dimension your bores, leaving plenty of ways for anything to go wrong, like tear out. You might find a check in your board that literally might fall apart later, stuff like that. When you're doing this, I would suggest you make an extra piece, like 5 legs instead of 4, so that when you screw up, you're good. We'll get to that later. Also, you're going to be cutting tenons. You need a test piece to dial in the weapon of choice. In this case, I'll be using Josh's Brutus tenon machine. It should go without saying, but some Quamble will say, "But I don't have a workshop full of pro tools." Well, you have a handsaw and a ruler, and I hope by now a professional pencil. Use them. Or if you're proper kinky, use the domino. Everybody's favourite tool that gets the red mist going.
Unsubscribing. Pro tools used. You should only use a screwdriver to make everything.
Let's face it, using a domino would have had the main part of this desk made in a day. And then it's just everybody's kryptonite to make. The drawers. I'm sure you're wondering, why aren't I using a domino? When I make anything for Josh, well, in this case his mum, but technically he's a client, I guess, I'll make it how he wants it made. It's traditional Mortise and Tenon all day long here. And I hear you thinking, wondering why am I using the radial arm saw over my K-Pax? The RAS is mustard for breaking down wide boards. The K-Pax is my go-to for finish dimensional cuts though. And it's his blade I'm dulling, not mine. Josh will be my outfeed table for the day. He's doing a fantastic job. He hasn't kicked the board once into the blade like I do. And if you're wondering why there's a screwdriver involved, the tension in those boards makes it extremely difficult to push the board through, so he's opening the boards up to get through the cut. I won't bore you with planing every single little piece up. If I had my time again, a planer would be the first tool I'd buy. Absolutely, it makes all the difference to all your joinery, as long as everything's square, everything goes fine. If I was tight for space, I'd have to buy a combination machine. If not though, preferably I'd rather have separates, a thicknesser and a planer. That's a jointer and a planer to you guys across the pond. Leg stock. I'll explain what I'm looking for and why I'm happy that this stock is rifts sawn, so I can have 2 faces of a leg that look very similar, so it just looks better on the eye. Like, you know, see, this grain is different to this grain on this side really. Well, it's more noticeable here. You see what I mean? Whereas now, as it's rift sawn, these 2 faces look good, don't they? So you're going to pick this leg, you're going to mark out your joinery and make sure those 2 faces are on the outside of your whatever you're making these legs for. It just looks better. Details, details. For the record here, I'm only squaring up the tops of the legs. I'm not cutting them to length. That's why there's only 4 cuts. Here's why you make a spare, or certainly make a test piece. In this case, a test piece and another leg, including all the mortises. Hope you can see that on camera, but you can just see you've overshot the cut and there's a gap. I should have done this earlier when I started, because I'm going to be staining this later, not paint. It doesn't matter how many dry runs you do. When the glue rocks up, something always goes wrong. One of the most important things to do when making a drawer is making sure the corresponding pieces are exactly the same length. So use the piece you cut to measure out the corresponding piece. I said, as just before I went to glue this up, I need to flip this over, and then my brain went dead. Have you spotted what I've done wrong yet? Not much chance of me sliding the base in like that, is there? In all my years, these drawer sides came with instructions, and the instructions showed that the wider part of the slide should be connected to the drawer. Now, I've never ever fitted them like that. It's always been the wider part to the cabinet. So anyway, that's why these drawer slides are installed this way. It was Josh's idea to recess them though. Let's just take a second to appreciate the engineering here. Look at those handles and where they're positioned. The routers are so perfectly balanced, and so very little amount of dust from it too.
What is it, guys? First across the top. Close to the end, I can get it. Just gently, just so it closes the gap. Now, right, then you need to go on the outside of these. You need to go on the outside of these. Close to the corner if you can get. Do that. Okay, that one out. A little bit more. Oh, smoke in here. That's better, okay. Tighten these ends up. That's it, go on. Loosen that one off slightly. Tighten this one. It's tight as fuck.
Josh took it upon himself and did this with no word to me, so it wasn't film, which pissed me off. I'm curious though, that is the face you're seeing, and for me it's the wrong way round. I would have done it for the underside to make the top look thinner, but it's not for me. But what do you think, A or B? Invariably, when I ever use spirit-based stain, I always get comments saying how difficult it is to use. So I thought I'd explain how to use this stuff and get it successful. Because I think spirit-based stains are the best. Unfortunately, most of the stains now are water-based. Also. And the trouble is with spirit-based stains, you can start lifting the pigment if you work it too much. So my advice to you, especially if you're doing something like this, is to pick your corner where you're going to see the least, which is at the back here. You need to then work this way around. So what you're strictly doing is you've got a wet line. As you're working, you're moving your line around the piece, and you want to constantly keep that line wet, and whilst working what you've put down out evenly. With parts like this, it's a lot more difficult, because you've got a lot more edges, and you must go back, and there's loads of dribbling going on this side. That must not get dry. You need to chase that and feather it out. Now, if you're working the stain and you get to the point and you start to feel it getting a bit tacky, do not touch it anymore, because you're asking for trouble. There's nothing you can do about it, and that's that. Right, I already have done the other side, just in case you're wondering. The trick with wax or finish is not to put too much on to get a flat finish, that is. If you use a brush, a roller, or one of those foam things, foam brushes, you'll find you'll get too much on it. Of course, you can always remove it. Backwards and forwards, left and right, rub it in. Depends how thirsty the wood is, of course. If you've got to put too much down like I just did there, spread it out. Move it somewhere else. Backwards and forwards, left and right, massage it in. You got a section done, left to right. Even those patches out. If you want a completely flat finish, no marks whatsoever, as in application marks, you might want to do 3 coats. 3 thin coats. I'm hoping we'll get this done in 2. But it depends on how thirsty the wood is. Or we can give it 5 minutes and let it soak it up a bit and come back to it. I just want to see at a minute if I put too much on, which does look like I have. Now if you're doing this the previous day, you put your first coat in, this rag, I'd wipe the excess off and then stick it in a plastic bag, because the next day you're going to need it. So if you want to remove some of this finish, it's better to use a slightly conditioned rag than a completely dry rag, which I haven't done, so it's going to have to be a dry rag. Yep. Ever so lightly skim over the top of it. You know it's working for you if you start to see less and less lines, and there'll be a point where what you can see is just going to flow out and flatten itself. What you don't want is lines that look like the Great Wall of China. Either though you've got opposing grain, left to right, top to bottom here, you need to work with the grain with it. I have a feeling though this isn't going to go particularly smooth because it's only been sanded to 120, not 220. I don't go to this amount of effort for the base or for the inside of the drawer or the underneath of this table. It's just where people's hands are going to be touching. Unfortunately the camera doesn't pick up what I'm trying to remove to give it a nice flat finish, otherwise I'd show you. I marked the drawer side position before removing them to save any faffing about here and make this simple. I want to say a warm welcome and thank you to my new patron Graham Beach. If you can, I'd be grateful if you would head over to my Patreon page to support this channel. It's the cost of £1 a month, it's pressure free, no obligation, cancel anytime, early access to vids with no ads, and a WhatsApp group where we chew the fat. It's just a small group, and that's for top tier peeps. The vid to my Patreon page will be in the video description below. you enjoyed the vid, be lucky.